Hello, this is Timothy Bond with True Vine Publishing Company, and you are watching the next episode of The Right Change, where our guest today is Stephen L. Coffey, author of Baby Stephen's Gift of Life. My brother, how you doing today?
My brother, I tell you, it is good to see you in this virtual space.
Yeah.
I am doing fantastic, man. Fantastic.
Awesome. I just want to stop and take a second and let everybody know this man and I grew up together, and it's amazing to see. It never surprises me to see the connections that God makes and the plans that he has for those connections. I never would have imagined, when we were in high school pledging, Kappa League and all of that, that one day we would be coming together to create a product that can help people and change lives. So, I'm just excited, man.
Yeah, man, you're absolutely right. I could have never in my wildest dreams thought that where we were at Whites Creek High School, right, doing all the things we did back then, that right, we were both in this same space, and certainly utilizing a platform like publishing a book.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there in itself is something. And so I give kudos and tip my hat to you for the work you've done at True Vine to just make sure that that publishing a book is not for the elite. It is for everybody. So I tip my hat to you for the work you've done also to provide me space and platform to, one, share my son's experience and his story, but two, to also shed light into what I think are gaps and seams in what we all experience in the medical and health career fields and stuff. So I just appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this interview as well, because along with you just sharing your publishing experience, I think you have a lot to share that everybody might be experiencing. So I'm looking forward to that. So first of all, your resume, okay? Of course, your resume is something like a book within itself.
Maybe that's the second book right there.
Right, that's book 2, just listing all of your accomplishments. That's a 100-page book. But tell people a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I will tell you, I am a proud Nashvilleian, born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, educated in the Davidson County Public Schools, graduated from Whites Creek High School. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of God in my story of how I was brought up, right? So, I come from a very religious family. So we always believed in going to church on every Sunday. And I was telling somebody at work yesterday and said, if you can hang out in the club on a Saturday, you can definitely make your way to the church house on Sunday. So
right.
I'm rooted and brought up in that. But I say the God piece when it comes to my family and my educational experiences, because I wanted to start my schooling at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, the Morehouse College. Be it ever so humble, there's no place like the house. So I wanted to start there, but my mom, being a single parent at the time, or being a single parent as a whole, didn't have the money to send me there. And so we stepped out on faith, and I started my educational endeavors at a very small school in South Carolina called Voorhees College, now Voorhees University. And I always give them credit because that's where I started. My desire to go to Morehouse didn't end. And so at my time at Voorhees, I ended up studying overseas at Whitelands College, Roehampton Institute, University of Surrey, in international politics. And then I transferred because I wanted to follow my goal. It was something that was delayed but not denied. And I ended up transferring to Morehouse College in 1998. So let me date myself a little bit there. 98. Right, 98. And so I say that because I have people that work for me that are barely 23 years old. So they never get my references. But transferred to Morehouse in 98 and joined the Air Force ROTC program at Georgia Tech. And I'll tell you where my Tennessee roots and ties, it always comes back to there because I graduated from Morehouse early. So I graduated in December of 2000, but I came back to Nashville to finish up my ROTC training at Tennessee State, at 790. And I'll tell you that experience at Tennessee State really solidified my love and my passion for the Air Force. I'll tell you, my time at Georgia Tech, I was very committed to doing maybe my 4 years and out, but it was Tennessee State and that one semester of ROTC that really let me know that there were people in the Air Force that looked like me, and that I could be a senior officer, that I could be a producing officer that was really just good to this Air Force. And so I started a career down in Memphis doing recruiting for the Air Force Academy, which was a fantastic opportunity to spread the word about the Air Force and the opportunities that you could have in the military. And I'll tell you what was interesting. I would go into high schools and I would talk to the students, and the first thing I would say is, "I don't care if you join the Air Force." And they all look at me like, what are you talking about? Aren't you a recruiter?" I said, "Yeah, I don't care if you join the Air Force. I care that you have a plan and that you make a choice. Now, if the Air Force fits into that choice, fantastic. But I want to make sure you have a plan." And that approach of saying I'm more concerned about the people than the product of just getting the numbers made me the number one recruiter in Tennessee and Kentucky for the year that I was there. Wow. Did my career, and I'll tell you, I've now been in 22 years. So what was 4 years and get out has turned into a 22-year career. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going to retire, but at 20 years, you're eligible to retire. So 22 years of service here. And I have worked in everywhere from U.S. Central Command when we started the war in Afghanistan to Special Operations Command when we killed Osama bin Laden, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and was an aide for two presidents under the President Bush and Barack Obama as a military aide in the White House. So fantastic experiences there, and it culminated in year-long deployment. So I've had a very rich career in the military and have no regrets about anything that the military has done for me professionally and even personally. And that sort of dovetails into Stephen's story and his experience with healthcare, because the military hospital is where he was born and unfortunately experienced a diagnostic error when he was born. So that's a little bit about me, but I will tell you, I am all day, every day, a proud Nashvilleian, Tennessean, and good Southern country boy at heart.
Look, I'm about to close this out and go join the military. I'm at
Gladly take you, brother.
Man, it's very amazing, that what I love about you is, you have this high status, you're a colonel, but even when we first reconnected and I'm like, "Oh, wow, you're a colonel. I should be saluting you." Like, "No, man, I'm just still Stephen." I just love your humility and love, your groundedness. And it really stands out and really stuck out to me as I watched your videos with your son. Now,
Hi, Sunday morning. I have a good day. That's too much. That's too much.
Well, you can pour some back out.
That's too much. Come back.
Sunday mornings.
Sunday morning.
Having coffee.
Having coffee.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I did cheers. Oh, Daddy had to go out of town.
I want to go to town.
I'll be back though.
I want to go to town.
Who's going to Texas?
I want to go to Texas with Daddy.
Have you been to Texas?
Yeah.
You haven't.
I want to go to Texas.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, my son, and we'll get a little more into this with what actually happened as a result of those and why we really started those. But my mom, and she passed away in 2018, but it was really her idea. There was one time that he and I were doing a Facebook call because she lived in Tennessee and I was up in the DC area. And it was one of those things that just popped off in her mind. She said, "You guys should do this on a regular basis." And that was the spark that led me to say we should do something called a coffee break. So a little bit of a play on my last name of coffee. But every Saturday morning, and I will tell you, every single Saturday morning for about 4 years, Stephen and I would just get around the kitchen island or the coffee table or whatnot and just have breakfast. We would cook, but more importantly, we bonded as father and son. We had an opportunity to really just talk about whatever was on his, at the time, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old mind. And really, I started to see his development as a young man, as a little boy, to see the challenges, to see the world through his eyes. We don't do them as much now just because, I'm giving him that choice of, I want you to want to do this, not me forcing you to do this. And so we do pop on periodically. But it was one of those things that really helped him to first develop in his speech. So because of his transplant, and again, we'll get into some of that,
Mm-hmm.
he had some medical challenges with occupational and physical therapy. And one of those occupational challenges dealt with speech. And so having an opportunity through our coffee breaks on Facebook, and we had, I'll tell you, thousands of people, and that is not an exaggeration. There are many videos where thousands of people would like and comment and share, gave us an opportunity to have a different level of engagement, because it was not just dad talking to Stephen. It was Stephen engaging with a broad audience that spanned from California to the United Kingdom. We actually had one time with a friend of ours from Seoul, Korea. And so we're talking this global impact. And every single person that tuned in, every single person that made a comment poured into him. And it helped develop him in speech, because he started to talk more, because it was a different level of engagement. But it was that kind of consistency with his Facebook videos that really helped him to start to say, I think I want to do something. You know, all the kids now want to be a YouTuber. And so I'm coming to grips with, you want to be a YouTuber? I have to be a lawyer, doctor,
right.
I'll be a YouTuber. You know, he tells me about this Logan Paul or Jake Paul or whoever sells. I'm like, my God, well, it's Gatorade to me, son. But he wants to be a YouTuber. And I think what was a driving force behind that was the fact that we had a platform through social media, and the fact that we had an audience that engaged him, that made him and me think differently about a lot of things. And so I will tell you, we've used that platform to bring light and voice to issues and concerns that are oftentimes swept under a rug. And I'll jump a little bit and just say one thing about, we talked about in the summer of 2020, I was deployed in the Middle East for the entire year. And I jokingly say to everyone that if you're going to be deployed in the Middle East, the best time to do it was 2020, because I was stuck in a desert, you were stuck at home. So we kind of have the same type of thing going on. But you guys remember in the summer of 20 that was somewhat of the summer of unrest. George Floyd had been murdered. There were so many other police shootings and incidents that happened. And I am now 6,000 miles away from my son during that time. And we had an opportunity through that same Saturday morning coffee break to discuss some of those really tough issues that I would have to be able to convey to him as father to son, as Black man to Black boy. Those types of things were precipitated and really just aided through our talks on Saturday. So those coffee breaks have been invaluable to me. I get a chance often to reflect back. You know, they pop up as a memory on your timeline. And so I get a chance to see him when he was a much smaller boy. I told him one day, son, you're going to look at me one day and not think that I'm cool. He was like, Dad, I'm never going to think you're not cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I'm not cool now. So.
Man, I think it's amazing. You know, I'll take this time to say this. You are officially a True Vine bestseller. You know, that, and I say that because you are getting daily sales, which you probably get a every time we log your sales, your phone is probably blowing up, right? It does. or your emails. But not only daily sales, but what I find spectacular is the span of your reach. I mean, people from all over the country. Usually what I'll find is, you know, when people start getting sales, you'll find there's a specific area, usually the area where their family might be or where they live. But you, I mean, we're getting orders from overseas, and my website's not even set up to take. I don't know why they're accepting them, but they're not even set up to take these overseas, you know, the shipping for it. But I mean, it's just amazing, man. How does that feel to see that kind of an outpouring of love? And I can always tell when Stephen has posted something online, because I'll wake up and my phone is buzzing. You got to sell. You got to sell. So tell me how that feels, and how is little Stephen? How's he coping with this attention?
It is absolutely amazing. First, to find out that I'm a bestseller, that is amazing. And Stephen, we're bestsellers. That's just a huge honor and title, and I'm so glad to be affiliated with True Vine Publishing and reach that plateau, that endeavor. It's amazing. I'll tell you, I am blown away daily when I see that log and the number of people that buy, and it's not just buying one book. Sometimes it's 10 books. It's, all those types of things. And so I am just amazed at this response. And he is amazed because, we sign books. He is excited to personally sign all of the books that have gone out. And so it's just a really good exercise for him to grow that confidence that this is something that's about him. This is his legacy. This is something that will spread his story, his experience to this broader audience. One of the things about his book, we talk a little bit about this diagnostic error, right? And so I told you earlier that Stephen was born in September 28, 2012. And I'll tell you, I was very excited as a dad to really just have a son, one to carry on the good name. I was like, I got a boy. Yeah. And so, I was excited about him being born. I was excited about this new life of being a dad. But then my world changed. And I oftentimes quote Charles Dickens when I say it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. And those words came true with his birth, in that I was excited about being a dad. And then I find out that he has this metabolic condition that required him to have a liver transplant at a very tender age of 8 weeks old. 8 weeks old. So I have a very soft place in my heart for those very young babies, those 1, 2, 3-month-old babies, because I look at them and I see my son when he was in that space. And so when we look at each book sold, it's each time that we get a chance to tell his story that a miracle can happen. That is a living miracle, to see an 8-week-old baby have a 7-year-old liver that was transplanted in him. And so that guardian angel that donated a liver, we mentioned that in the book, which we reference. It sort of looks like my mom, and that was some homage to her. But truthfully, it was that 7-year-old whom I don't know, wow, whose parents decided to give us another chance at life with the loss of their own child. It's a chance to spread that word. It's a chance to spread it globally, that patients matter, that patient voices matter, that you matter in your healthcare. And again, to just show a miracle, because oftentimes people get a little downtrodden and they get beset with this, oh my God, woe is me, I'm in this system. And oftentimes the only thing you need to remember is that there is always hope. And Stephen's story is about hope. And so I am excited every single time I wake up and get a chance to post something about it. For every person that sends me an email or a call, or I meet them at the grocery store. We had an event one time where he and I were just going out. We were walking around and we did a pop-up book signing. I had books in my car because every good person has books in your car. And literally we were talking to a person. They said, you need to come in here right now and sell some books. And we sold out. And so it is just that opportunity to spread that message of hope, of love. That just excites me, and it does so much for him every single day that we get a chance. I'm just excited about it.
Let's talk about the impetus that led to this book, the baby Stephen story.
Yeah, so I briefly touched on it. It was really a world-changing, life-changing, rather, event for me. And being a parent is a life-changing event in itself. But being a parent of a child who has experienced diagnostic error, who has a health challenge, a lifelong health challenge, is something that I never, ever in my wildest dreams imagined. And one thing I'll say is that having him have his health challenges is really like an adverse event. It's adversity. And what I found about adversity is it's like a sword. It cuts going in because it will absolutely shatter who you think you are, what you think you're supposed to have. But it cuts coming out in a sense that it will break open and expose your authentic self. And so here I am now as a dad with all these hopes and dreams for my son. And I find out that he now has a liver transplant, needs a liver transplant. And I always say this because I never forget those words. It was November the 28th, 2012. I was sitting in a large hospital. A resident was presenting my son to the attendings, the senior doctors, and it said, this is Stephen, our 2-month-old from an outside hospital. He has fulminant liver failure, secondary to galactosemia. And it was in that moment that I realized my world absolutely changed. So prior to us going to that hospital and being told those words, and remember, this is only a 2-month time span, Stephen had been in and out of the hospital because his bilirubin was high. And so for the parents out there and those who maybe don't have children, bilirubin just makes you a little bit jaundice, you're a little bit yellow. And so what we saw in him were signs and symptoms that were actually classic galactosemia. And that's a metabolic condition that his body cannot break down human or animal milk. So his mother's milk that he got, the safest thing in the world that we're told, was damaging his liver unbeknownst to us.
Wow.
And so he'd been in and out of the hospital many, many times, trying to figure out what's going on with this. The doctors didn't really know. We had one doctor who actually came and said, well, we think it's something, but you, patient, go tell a larger hospital. Now put yourself in my place. We hear from this doctor on a speakerphone. There's a communication barrier because it's a speakerphone. Mm-hmm. But for my wife and I, we were like, hey, we need to both hear this at the same time. But there's a communication barrier of a speakerphone. There's a communication barrier that you have a layperson, not clinically trained, going to a larger hospital to explain a complex metabolic condition to other doctors. A lot of gaps and seams that just came about from that situation. We still had a delay in diagnosis. You fast forward to Thanksgiving of 2012, and here we are with our son, and something doesn't look right. We bring our baby to a hospital, and we say, hey, something doesn't look right, and we were dismissed. Our concern was overlooked. We were characterized as you're overreacting, you're a new parent. His lump on his leg was a fatty tissue or swollen lymph node. It's nothing serious. Don't worry. And we persisted. We persisted and found a voice to say, no, something is wrong. We came back the next day and they said, oh, well, we'll treat you a little bit differently now because you come back for a second day. Mm-hmm. We'll treat you differently now because the first time I came to the hospital, I was in very comfortable clothes. I had on a hoodie and sweatpants. I was ready to go do battle for Black Friday shopping to get toys for my son's first Christmas. But now I came back and I'm dressed a little differently. So what that uncovered is a bias in medicine. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that bias is still amongst us now because we're often made up of our past experiences and that influences the bias. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm treated differently. I'm treated like an officer in the military. I'm treated like a person who has multiple degrees and SEIs and all these letters and accoutrements behind my name. But it was a little bit too late. Wow. And then we get told we have to have a transplant. So in his story, there's a lot of themes and threads that I pulled from the tapestry that made his experience. And when I speak around the country, I tell people that we have to recognize biases. We have to recognize that there are gaps and seams in healthcare. And it's not just for pediatrics, but it also happens with our geriatrics, with our regular patients. It happens in the military health system. And I know that every provider is doing their level best to make sure that we try to address those things. But it really starts with changing the culture, and that culture needs to include patients as partners in care. And so I could pose a question to all of the viewers, how many times have you gone to a hospital or done something where you've had to go engage the medical system and you weren't listened to? I came in because my leg was hurting and the doctor fixed my arm. And even though your arm was really the issue, your concern was you didn't fix my leg. Mm-hmm. And so really including that patient voice and being a partner in care, that's the message that I take through his book to the world, mm-hmm. and certainly to medicine. I'll tell you one quick vignette. We were at a conference a week or so ago. It's the NORD, it's the National Organization for Rare Diseases and Disorders. And so Stephen has a rare metabolic condition. And so he and I were in this conference, and I was sitting on this panel doing a discussion. And it was so cute to see him like come up to the stage, and he's like, but talk about my book, Dad. and I did, because what happens is that not only are we showing that book because it talks about him, but it also talks about that patient voice. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the respect that you deserve in your own medical care. My biggest thing that I would tell anyone is that as a caregiver of a patient who has a lifelong condition, liver transplants and any other transplant, it is not an incident. It is not a one-time thing. There is anti-rejection medicine that my son takes every single day, twice a day, every 12 hours for the rest of his life. Yeah. That's a lifelong, maintenance that we have to do to make sure he stays healthy. And so we have to be partners in care. And that is really one of those other themes and threads that's in the book of you have to respect patients. You have to respect our voice, because when you include patients in care, it makes care safer. And that's ultimately what we want to have from our health system. Yeah.
One of the things I love is I see that you didn't just deal with that and then walk away, but you really got engaged and got in communities. Talk to us about the different organizations that, I don't know if you founded or you joined. Talk to us about those.
Well, the one thing I often say is when your avocation, what you are love to do, and your advocation, your vocation and your avocation, when your vocation, what you're paid to do, and your avocation, what you love to do, when those things intersect, you
Mhm.
find your happiness, you
Mhm.
find your purpose. When I am paid to do what I love to do, that's absolute bliss. Uh, Being a part of this community where I am not only a patient advocate, but I am an activist, and I specifically emphasize the activist role
Mhm.
because it means that I'm more engaged than just trying to advocate for my son. You know, I had an opportunity to work with MedStar Health, which is a large hospital system here in the Mid Atlantic region, and founded the Patients and Family Advisory Council for Quality and Safety. So, what that means is that I sit on a board at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, where Stephen had his transplant, as a patient and family advisor. I sit on that same type of board with MedStar Health and the numbers of hospitals that they have in this area to advise and give that patient perspective in clinical practice. So understand that I tell the people all the time that going to the hospital is a significant emotional event. I worked in the Pentagon for many years, worked around a lot of general officers, worked in the White House, and all those kinds of things. When I take people on a tour of the Pentagon or take people on a tour of the White House, they're amazed. When you go to the Pentagon, we have Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts right beside each other, competing to see who sells the best pumpkin spice latte. They're amazed. I walk in that building and I don't recognize anything on the walls. I don't pay attention to it because I see it every day.
Mhm.
Conversely, when you go to the hospital, doctors go every day. That's their job. They don't realize how cold it is, how sterile the walls look, how bad the signage is, the different nomenclature and the different language that is spoken. They don't realize it because they do it. And so when a patient comes in, it's a significant emotional event.
Right.
And through that significant emotional event for me, I work with MedStar Georgetown, I work with MedStar Health. I founded other organizations called the Patients for Patient Safety US, which is a US branch of the World Health Organization. And we start to address those global patient safety aims that are established by the World Health Organization. So this is an international organization that I co-founded with 9 other titans in the field of health advocacy and activism. And so that was a part and birthed out of Stephen's experience. And the thing that I was told as I was getting into this space is that if you have to go beyond the story, you got to go beyond the story because oftentimes people want to hear a story and they want to have a happy ending. And so I talk with some dear friends and colleagues and learn that I do have to have some educational foundation in that. So you talk about the resume earlier on. I went to George Washington University to go get a master's degree there. I went to Georgetown University, got another degree from there, master's degree from there, went to Cornell and degree from there because those types of educational endeavors really helped to shape the foundation of how I was going to engage as an activist and patient advocate. And
Mhm.
so doing those types of things, sitting on boards with Hope for Henry, which is another great organization that reimagines how our youngest patients are in the hospital. There's a quick story about that Hope for Henry Foundation. Lori Strong and her son Henry died from cancer. And she started this organization to help reimagine what his hospital stays would be like. Had a board meeting with them last night. We've now signed up our 35th hospital nationwide to
Wow.
reimagine how children are included and how they receive care in hospitals. And so to be as a patient, caregiver, to be part of that kind of a board, to be a part of the board of liver mamas and families where we look at specifically liver transplanted kids and shape what medicine looks like and that medical experience looks like for them,
Mhm.
truly amazing. And
Mhm.
one last thing about PFPS US. It's a great organization. I will tell you that before becoming a member and co-founder of this organization, I didn't realize how big and how much work we needed to do globally when we start to think about healthcare. Think about disparities in healthcare. It goes beyond just the black and white that we oftentimes put things into those kinds of boxes. But what happens when we're talking about different types of religions, when we're talking about sexual orientations, when we're
Mhm.
talking about even something as simple as urban and rural, those kinds of things, those paradigms in medicine are so different. And PFPS US helps to address those types of things. And so I am just excited that because of Stephen's experience, because of this book, I have gotten to that nexus of avocation and vocation. And I am in a place of happiness where I get a chance to talk about this and educate and help people every single day.
You know, and I'm excited because I just heard book number 2.
I'll tell you what's really funny is I thought about active duty military officer. Clearly, you can see there. Right? There's a book that I believe needs to be developed to help hospitals and systems to learn how to deal with crisis. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic really, I think, exposed a blind spot for a lot of people, right? Telemedicine was not really a thing prior to 2020. And we now find that telemedicine works. We now find that Zoom and Team, I mean, look at what's right now. It works. It's a way that we can do business. It's a way that we can reach a broader audience. And so I think that there's a book, or there's something that needs to be to fill in that void of how we engage in this now, you know, what I call there's before COVID, you know, BC and after COVID. You know, we've now got to look to this new era of how do we do things? How do we operate in a space of patient safety? How do we operate in a space of inclusiveness after COVID in this digital world? Because there's still a digital divide. And so we have to account for those things. And there's a book, there's something that's churning and burning in my head here as we talk about how do we flesh that out? Because I believe there's a need, and a book that I'm going to write is the answer to that need.
Yeah, I see it. I always say we are a world-changing publishing company, and those are kind of books, you know, the books that change people's lives. We can just change the way one person thinks, a ripple effect of change happens, man. I mean, this was such a dense and full interview, you know. It's almost, you wouldn't think a conversation about a children's book would be so deep and so impactful. So, man, I'm really excited about your book, excited about what God is doing with your book and what he's going to do and continue to do. I know that you have a lot to get through to get back to where you need to be in the next hour or so. How can people get in contact with you and learn more about you?
Well, certainly. First of all, I appreciate this opportunity, and I do not take it for granted nor lightly that we had an opportunity just to share in this space as brothers, to just really get an opportunity to spread this message. Yeah. So I can be contacted via email at head2connections with an S at Gmail, head2heartconnections@gmail.com. That way I've got the social media stuff out there as well on Facebook, Stephen Coffey, on LinkedIn, the same, Stephen L. Coffey. And so I just appreciate this opportunity to share with you and this huge audience that you have, this following that you have, Stephen's experience and Stephen's story, and to provide that other sense of hope. Again, this is so rich. Like I said, we talked earlier about what it takes for me to be able to do one of these. I don't have unclassified cameras in my office, so I had to get up from my office, leave, take a 30-minute drive to another unclassified building to bring a laptop in. So I will tell you, that speaks to how much I respect and love you, brother.
Same here, man. Same here.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. All right, man. Well, look, everyone, I want you to like and share this video. And just based on experience, I know that's going to happen around the world based on the response and the outpour of love that this book and this dynamic duo, father-son duo has received. I wish little Stephen could have been on here. That would have been awesome. But, you know, maybe we'll do something. We'll do something on Facebook or something like that later on. Everyone like and share. Get the word out about this book. Steve, Colonel, I appreciate you. You have a wonderful day, man.
I mean, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this.